mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja. Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya. Kuwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa mkulima, kuwa mshindi. Kuwa na uhakika sasa, kulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja. Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Right. Hello there. Welcome back to Farm Kenya. Today we are talking about mushroom farming. And with us is Maurice Ikonya, who is a mushroom farmer, and he's just come here today to give us a little bit of insights when it comes to mushroom farming. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the ins and outs of mushroom farming.
All right.
First of all, let us start with the basics.
Okay.
Mushroom farming, what does a farmer need to do if someone wants to start mushroom farming?
All right.
What do they have to do, the ins and outs?
Thank you so much for that question. It's something we've been doing quite recently, training a lot of farmers. So that, to answer your question, you need training. First of all, you need to train on how to grow them, where to source raw materials, and the type of mushrooms to grow. There are over 100 types of edible mushrooms, so you need to know which one is good. And it would depend on the market that you want to target. There are the common mushrooms, they're the easiest to grow, and then there are the exotic ones that would need a little bit of technical and also some sophisticated grow rooms. Yes.
All right. So let's look at mushroom that is that farmers can be able to sell in the market.
Oh, okay.
First of all, what types are they? Because we've seen the button ones.
Yes, there's the button.
The button white ones.
Yes.
And then just give us
yes.
some
So there's
examples.
button, there's button and oyster. Those are the common ones in the market. But then in button, there are categories. You have the brown button, which is called cremini, and you also have portobello. So those are the same family with button mushrooms. Then we have the oyster mushrooms, we have shiitake, we have ganodama, which is a medicinal mushroom. We have cordyceps, also medicinal, and others such as lion's mane, also medicinal. So the ones a person can start with easily are the oyster mushrooms.
Okay.
Yes, followed by the button mushrooms.
Okay.
Yes.
And now, when you look at the land that you can prepare for you to grow your mushrooms, what goes into preparation of everything from the onset?
Okay.
Like, if you want to plant your mushrooms there, what goes into that?
Very good. So the reason why we thought of doing mushrooms is because you don't need land, or rather you don't need a big land to do that.
Okay.
They are called the smart crops because first of all, climate, you control your own climate. It doesn't depend on the natural weather. Maybe it's raining or it's sunny. Also, you just need a grow house for you to grow. Then the raw materials, you need agricultural waste like the wheat straws. You need rice straws, maybe maize stalks, maize tovers, maize cobs, bean stalks. All those once you've harvested, or you know of a farm that have just done harvesting their crop, you can use that as a substrate to grow your mushrooms. Especially the oyster variety, it's quite easy to grow. You only need to pasteurize your substrate, and then you spawn. By spawning, you add the seed. And then you incubate for about 28 to 31 days, and you start harvesting your mushrooms.
Okay.
Yes.
So, before we get to the harvesting part,
all right.
Now there's this other part of the way you've mentioned, you put the seed.
Yes.
And then, so how is the whole process? Do we, like, what goes into that by the time you get to harvesting? And how do you even know that the mushroom is ready for harvesting?
Good. So, your first question is what do you need to grow?
Yes.
So the technicality of growing mushrooms, you need a skill. You need that skill to do that. So in agriculture, people thought that agriculture is for the unlearned, people who did not go to school. But for mushrooms, it proves you wrong, because you need to know exactly what you're doing. So for oyster per se, I'll start with oyster mushrooms. You need to source your spawn. And we make the spawn here in the country, and then you get your substrate. Once you get your substrate, you soak it. You soak it in coast calcium, or something we call calcium hydroxide. Once you soak it for about 30 to 40 minutes, you drain the water, and then you start bagging. After bagging, we use bags. That's why I said you don't need land. You use bags, you put your substrate inside, and then you steam in a drum of water. You steam for 2 hours, and the reason why we are steaming is to kill any pathogen that might harm the mushrooms. Mushrooms are quite sensitive and delicate, so they don't need any contamination. So you need to be quite hygienic when you're producing mushrooms. So once you pasteurize the mushrooms, after 2 hours of steaming, you let them cool overnight. Once it cools, now you come with your spawn or the seed and inoculate at a process we call inoculating. So you introduce the seed with the pasteurized substrate.
Okay.
Then after you do that, and again, you need to be hygienic. You watch everything that you're doing. You need to clean all your materials, everything. If you're using any polythene, you need to be sprayed with methylated spirit. You need to have gloves so that you don't bring any contamination into the seed or the substrate. And then after that, now the seed will start colonizing the substrate. You have made food for the mushrooms, so it will start traveling in that bag, colonizing the substrate, and it will turn from brown to white. So as your question, how do you know it's ready to harvest? So the whole bag will turn to white, and then you start getting some primordia, some pinheads that are swelling in the bag, and then you either open the bag from the front, or you make some cuts on the sides, and then the mushrooms just pin from there.
Okay.
There are two conditions where you need to check on. During incubation, mushrooms need a little bit of a hot temperatures between 26 to 28 degrees for them to colonize a little bit faster. And then while fruiting, they need below 20 degrees Celsius, between 16 to 18 for them to fruit very well. And then relative humidity, they need a lot of humidity. So you need to introduce all those conditions in your grow house. So there's some technical things that you would need if you can do with just a knapsack, because a knapsack you would do maybe 3 or 4 times a day. You in the morning you go there and you spray water, and you don't spray directly to the mushrooms, because again that would make the substrate rot. So you just mist and make the room a little bit foggy.
Okay.
There are people who have gone a little bit more technical, and they've introduced machines in their grow house, and you have machines who are doing foggers, and you even have humidifiers. So it is a technical process, but again, it can be simplified. Yes.
Right. Very insightful.
Yes, indeed.
And very, very, very well packaged.
Thank you.
These mushrooms that
Yes.
grow on the side of the road, on the back of trees.
All right.
So what usually happens? Because the way you're explaining, so I'm wondering, okay, so the ones that grow on the side of the road,
yes.
what usually happens? What process do they go through in order for them to grow like that?
They grow through a similar process, only that now you find that place is quite humus. It's quite rich, it has not been cultivated, there are no chemicals used there, and mycelia is everywhere, on the roadside, on the farms, everywhere. It's among the oldest and longest living organism. Mycelia is a living organism, it's fungi. So it's available anywhere. So especially in the villages or up country, when it rains and then the rain subsides and there's a lot of humus everywhere, dry matter, then mycelia is able to colonize that. And when it's during the cold season, maybe the beginning of the cold season, June, July, you might find a lot of them just popping up and mushrooming on the roadside.
Okay.
But then for that, some are poisonous and some are not. Some are edible. In fact, people from upcountry, they've grown Western Nyanza, South Nyanza, they've grown eating mushrooms. But then when they come here, they find that the types of mushrooms they are consuming, for them, they thought they were poisonous, but only they resemble those ones. So you find that here, maybe in Nairobi, there's no mushrooms growing on the roadside, because we've used a lot of chemicals. There's cultivation that has been done, so the ground has been disturbed, and there's not much humus for the mushrooms to grow.
Okay.
So then again, and when you're doing mushrooms as a business, you're doing it commercially to earn a living. So you need to replicate all those conditions, and you can have mushroom throughout. Because you find the ones on the roadside, they would grow maybe for 3-4 days, and then when you come on the 5th day, there's nothing. They are all depleted.
Okay.
It's the same thing that would happen if you would just neglect your mushrooms.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, let's move on.
Yes, please.
You explained how they grow and how you can know it's ready for harvesting.
Yes.
So now let's get to the harvesting.
Okay.
How does someone even harvest mushrooms? Are there mechanisms of how you need to remove the piece from where it was growing,
from the bag,
the substrate, where it was growing, and how do you package them?
Okay.
Yes.
So for harvesting mushrooms, the way you know they're ready, if you're growing button mushrooms, they form the button, the head, the white head, and then it pops from the soil. When it grows bigger, we are using the old coin, the old 5 shilling coin.
Okay.
When they get to that size, the cup gets to that size, you know it's ready to harvest. So you just twist it, you're using clean hands again, you're still watching your hygiene. And that's why when we are selling mushrooms, we are very confident, because we know what we are selling to the consumers is something that is hygienic and clean. So you need to have clean hands so that you don't identify the mushrooms. So just handle the pin, the cup, you twist it, it disembarks from the stalk, and then you cut any soil that could be there, and then you wipe any dirt on top, and you package in a punnet. Normally we package in 250 grams punnet. Punnet is just a normal pack, but you find the normal ones being used in the country are blue in color. So you package in that 250 grams, and then you wrap in a cling film. So that's for button. For oyster, it goes a little bit different, because you don't use any soil in oyster mushrooms, or rather here in the country, we don't use any soil. So after it grows, and then you see the size of the cup is like the size of your palm. Then you know it's ready to harvest.
Okay.
If you leave it even for the button mushrooms, if you leave it maybe 2 or 3 days longer, the button mushrooms would open up and start now releasing spores, and that wouldn't be good for the shelf life. It has very little shelf life. Then for the oysters, if you leave them for too long, the edges would start becoming brown, and then they start curling down and removing spores, and that's, again, you can't keep that in the shelf for too long. So when the size is like the size of your palm, you just twist the whole thing. Mushrooms, oyster mushrooms grow like a bouquet. They grow together in a cluster. So for that one, you just harvest everything, and then you go and chop them, remove the stalk, and again weigh in a 250 punnet, wrap with a cling film, and it's ready for the market.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's look at the seasons that we have in a year.
Yes.
Is there a way, okay, first of all, do they survive through every season?
Yes.
And if they don't, if someone wants to grow on the season that they don't survive, what can they do? Can they create their own way and make maybe, and say, okay, in the incubation place, you're making sure that the temperature is almost as it would be in a different season? So just give us a perspective on that.
I started saying that it's a smart crop. And you can grow this one throughout the year without depending on the climate, whether it's rainy or sunny. But then again, there are seasons where when it's too dry and maybe it's too hot, and if you've constructed your house using materials that will bring in temperatures inside, or rather to bring heat inside, then it might affect the growth of your mushrooms. So what you do, you insulate your grow house. You insulate completely, and then you are the one to control now the conditions. So yes, you can grow even the times when there are no mushrooms in the market. But during the colder months, June, July, from May, June, July, there's a lot of mushrooms in the market. Because even a beginner, once you inoculate or you introduce a spawn in the substrate, the conditions are ripe for mushrooms to grow. And in those 3 months, we have a lot of mushrooms in the market, which also affects the pricing. Yes.
All right. So how long does it take for since the planting until the harvest? How long is that?
So for button mushrooms, it takes about 2 months. The first month is preparation, and then you pasteurize your substrate at the end of the month, and that is introducing, you pasteurize and then introduce the spawn, and then you go into incubation for about another month. So 2 months for button, and then for oyster is a month. You just prepare in about 4 days, you inoculate, and then after a month, you're ready to harvest.
Okay.
Yes, and then for both of them, you can harvest for about 2 to 3 months, and then you start all the process all over again. Yes.
Okay, so let's move to the market now.
Yes, please.
And look at, of course, dealing with different types of demographics, especially when it comes to the market.
Yes.
How is the mushroom market performing in Kenya as of now?
Interesting, quite good. I run a company by the name Mycelian Foods Limited, and we are in the production and distribution of mushrooms. We supply to the major supermarkets, and you find that we thought well, it's fairly new in the market. A lot of people know about mushrooms and they know the benefits of them. So it's a high demand. And then again, Kenya being a hub in the African continent, you have a lot of expatriates from the Western world.
Yes.
So they know the benefits of mushrooms. They've grown eating mushrooms. So there's a lot of demand here in the country, so much so that other companies are importing from other countries, as far as China, here closer home in Rwanda, and they bring the mushrooms in the country. You have others which are canned mushrooms and others are dried. So there's a huge market in the country. Research has shown that a survey was done by NAFIS and showed that the demand is about 1,200 tons annually, on production being about 500, leaving about 700 tons untapped. But that's where the demand comes in. Yes.
All right. So the statistics that you're giving, of course, that is huge.
Yes,
that
it is
huge, because at the end of the day, if tons,
yes,
that is very huge,
yes,
especially for mushrooms.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So let's also look at how to improve the market.
Okay.
When it comes to what needs to be done, especially in terms of transportation, and if we export,
yes,
what quality do we usually export?
All right.
Yes.
We've not gotten to exporting as of now, and the main reason is because of cost of production. Here in Kenya, everything is quite expensive, and the cost of production for mushrooms has been on the rise, while the price of it remained the same. So a punnet of mushroom you'll find going in the market between 250 to 300 per punnet, but the cost of producing that could be closer to maybe 150. So the costs are going up every now and then. So the first thing we need to do is work on the cost of production. And recently, together with a few colleagues of mine, we did another research to find whether we can have alternative substrates that we can use, because we are depending so much on the wheat straw. And you find that during the dry season, when there's not much fodder for livestock, they would tend to use the wheat straw as well to feed their livestock. So you find that there's a competition between the livestock keepers and the mushroom growers. So you find that the cost would go even higher than usually is. So the first thing we did is to check whether we can have any other substrate. And we found that sugarcane bagasse, or the residue that is left while producing sugar, can be used to grow mushrooms. And it's available from the factories. You can get it cheaply at around maybe 1 shilling per kg, as compared to about 18 or 20 shillings per kg of wheat straw. So that is a huge difference when it comes now to production. The other thing, when it comes to transporting your mushrooms, you need to harvest very early in the morning. Maybe between, you need to, me or yes?
It's okay. It's fine.
Okay. You need to harvest them early in the morning,
yeah,
when the sun has not come out yet, because you need them when they are still fresh. And if you expose them to sun, to the sun, they start scorching and they start turning their color. So you need to transport them very, very early, or have a vehicle that has a chiller or a refrigerated trucks for you to transport to the market. Yes.
Right. Thank you for that.
Most welcome.
Let's look at food waste.
Yes.
And of course, food security, and as you mentioned earlier, when it comes to handling mushrooms,
yes.
you need to be very, very, very careful.
Very careful.
Yes. So in terms of cleanliness in the market,
yes,
because of course mushrooms, we've seen them in supermarkets, and of course organic shops. So when it comes to how they are handled outside the farm, when being transported,
yes,
what amount do we have the ones that go to waste?
Yes.
And can they be value added upon?
Quite an interesting question, because as Mycelia and Foods Limited, we have started value addition for mushrooms.
Yes.
And the reason why we've done that is because our farmers, we contract farmers to do that. At the moment, we have 123 in 15 counties. So you find that after they harvest, there are some that would be rejected by the supermarkets. Maybe the grade isn't so good, or some have a little bit of dirt, and the market does not want that. So you find that we were losing up to 40–45% of the harvest. So to change that, or to mitigate that loss, we started drying the mushrooms and selling them as dry mushrooms. We also mill the dry mushrooms into mushroom powder, which can be used in different meals. And then we, such as mushroom cookies. That's the other product we've brought into the market, whereby we use 15% of the mushroom powder together with the wheat flour to do mushroom cookies. So now changing or mitigating the loss that a farmer could have gone of about 40–45%, and we can sell that and it is still edible. And for the dry mushrooms, they have a shelf life of about 2 years, so you can store them for longer as compared to the fresh mushrooms, which has a shelf life of about 10 days. Yes.
All right, Maurice,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I've picked something, mushroom cookies.
Yes.
I think you should have done something for us.
Next time I'll come with a few.
All right, thank you so much for engaging us in this conversation. All right, we've come to the end of this particular conversation. We were talking about mushroom farming, and I believe you've learnt a lot. Remember, also, you can value add on mushrooms, as he has explained. All right, my name is Kelvin Nyakundi. See you next time right here on Farm Kenya Show.
I hope you've learned a lot like I have from our conversation with Maurice Ikonyo. And by the way, you can tell us on our social media platforms and also on the numbers on the screen that you see there. It's free, by the way. Hautakatwa kitu. Kelvin, na ukala nini leo kwa hiyo conversation?
So kwa hiyo conversation, by then, learn vitu mob. Lakini one thing I picked is that you need to value add on the products, the produce. Usiache produce iende waste kama una kitu ya kufanya. So I learned you can make mushroom cookies, you can make powder out of the mushrooms, and also you can use it for different kinds of other different kinds of things that you would want to make outside that. So hiyo ndio kitu nimeget to learn today.
Perfect. Min melansi mushroom zote atini poisonous, and by the way, they're a good source of proteins. And this conversation, it is not ending here. Please keep tweeting us and keep SMSing us, engaging us across all social media platforms that you're seeing there below your screen. But unfortunately, manze, inabidi tuende manze, time imeisha. And thank you so much for your company. I've been your host, Marion Munyonganga, and Kelvin.
And I've been your host, Kelvin Nyakundi. Remember to continue contributing to this kind of conversation. We'll be here next time just to discuss more about agriculture.
Manze, tuende tukule mushroom, sindio?
Tuende tukule? Unataka tuende?
Kuwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa mkulima, kuwa mshindi, kuwa na uhakika sasa, kuulea mustakabali wa baadaye. Tufanye kazi pamoja na tukue pamoja, kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya. Kuwa mkono ambao